Little, yeah, the recording in progress. Yeah, welcome everyone. My name's Anita Thompson, and I'm thrilled to be here with you this evening. Um, I have in front of me, for those that just joined, a Snowflake template. If you would like to take a picture of that before we start. Also, Lisa did email you last minute. Thank goodness that she was able to do that because I completely forgot to include the template, and I apologize. But will have a copy in your email, or you can just snap a picture here and then look at it on your phone as we're going. This is just some examples of different snowflakes that you can use instead of the one that I'm going to be showing you. But you are very welcome to just copy off of my snowflake. I just wanted to give you some options here. Okay, so we are going to start off. You know what I forgot to mention? If you want to have to put your paint on a paper plate, I know those that received the art kits. You don't have I don't think you have a paper plate in there, but you are welcome to either grab a paper plate or some sort of palette to be able to put your paints on. We will be mixing some colors. Um, so you're welcome to do that. But we're not starting off with the paint yet. And also just a reminder to get a cup of water and some paper towels so that you can rinse your brushes. And we're going to get started with our pencil. So I'm going to move my template here. And so my original painting was rather small, and sometimes I do smaller examples or samples because I have so many. I have so many older paintings, and I have a small townhouse that sometimes I do them a little smaller. So we have about 8 by 8 square. If you are doing this on your own and you don't have the kit, it's okay if it's not a square. It's okay if it's not 8 by 8. Okay, so we are also going to be creating our snowflake. And if you want to use a ruler, you can also have that out too. For those that just joined, if you need to go get a ruler, please do. And also, just a reminder, have some Q-tips. So we are doing, a pointillism, or almost like an impressionistic style of this snowflake. Impressionism meaning it was an art period, and the artwork is a series of, sort of like dots that create create a picture using color theory. So we're doing kind of a simplified version, but as you can see with this, you can see that there are different shades of blue in here. There's also, using some darker areas around the corners and also in the middle. And it gives you literally an impression of, it being a little more realistic. So we're going to do that tonight. But first, we are going to draw. So, and if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. As Lisa said, this is being recorded, and I will give this to Lisa at some point tonight or early tomorrow morning, and then she will send it out to all of you when she's able to. All right, so grabbing our pencil now. Also, just make sure that you are on speaker view so that you can see this large. If you are on gallery view is where you can pretty much see everybody. You want to make sure you're on speaker view. Now, it depends on what device you're on. I'm on on an iPad, so it makes a big difference. All right, so we're going to start in the middle. And basically, as I mentioned, if you want to draw one of these, we're going to start off with line work first. So for instance, here is my sample. Let me do that. Okay. And I'm going to go in a bit closer now. But what I'm going to do is basically draw this in line work first. And so what I mean by that is, so I'm going to start in the middle here. And this is where I mention if you need to use a ruler, you can. So I'm going to kind of make like almost like a hexagonal shape. And I'm just going to kind of free draw it here. But again, if you feel more comfortable using a ruler, please do. You also want to make sure that you're drawing lightly. We will be painting over this. So it's not too much of a problem if you don't paint lightly. If we were using watercolor, I would definitely emphasize making sure that you paint lightly. All right, so that's the middle. So here again, if you wanted to do something different, if you wanted to do one of these, you would look off of it and pretty much draw in the middle. Like say, for instance, this one, you would start off with this middle section without drawing the exteriors yet. We're going to piece it all together. So you are welcome to do something like that, but you want to start off in the middle. All right, so now that we start off in the middle, I'm now, again, using line work still. I'm going to draw the long sections of the snowflake. I want to try and make sure that they are mostly the same length. Although I do like to make the side ones a little longer. These two on the left and the right, a little bit longer. And then also the middle ones. And that's just my preference. Oops, I forgot one here. There we go. And so that's how you would start one of the other ones as well. So you would just use line work. So, you might do let's see, or this is actually a 6-point. Yeah, you would do a 6-point star here, again, using lines. And then you would erase those lines afterward when you are ready to do the actual detail. So once we have this, you now want to decide, you want some smaller lines coming from these lines. And I'm going to do 3 sections on each line. You want to make sure to space them because we are going to make these 3-dimensional. Everything that we're doing, we're going to make 3-dimensional. This is fun to do with kids too. You can actually, what you could do with kids, or yourself, if you wanted to redo this as a, quicker version, you can actually take tape and tape off the lines, like using the tape as lines. You add the tape, stick the tape on the canvas, in a similar fashion or however you want it to look, and then you paint around it. And then when it's dry, you remove the tape. So take your time with the line work, because then what we're going to do, we're going to actually draw around each of the lines in order to make it look 3-dimensional. Now you can either draw around that middle line, or you can make that line be part of one of the sides. So see what I'm doing here? And I'm going to go in closer now that I have drawn it. So see what I'm doing here, and then I will erase in the middle. But you want to take your time and make sure that you pretty much have these parts rather straight, since it's all line work. All right, and you're going to do that in every section. Some of mine, it actually works out that I can use the pre-drawn line. And others, not so much. And the other thing is you want to remember to also go in the middle of your snowflake. And make that line work too. And if you want, you can add a little more, something else in the middle. I left mine sort of blank, but you can add some more, snowflake type details. You can add some more flourish on the ends if you want, or anywhere really. The middle shape. So if you were to create the middle shape and you wanted to do one of the other snowflakes, so basically, if you were to do like this one, you would look at this, and this is a circle. So I would create a circle in the middle and then have lines coming from it, of varying degrees. So you've got 4 longer lines and then 5 shorter ones with sort of like diamond shapes on the end. And that's how you would break it down into different type of snowflakes besides this one. This one here again, so you would take a basic shape, try to make a basic shape out of what you can follow. Here's another one that has a circle in the middle, line work, almost like the sun coming from it. This one would just be, straight down and then, sort of an X. This one would obviously be a star. And then you would make lines coming from it. And then you would continue to look off of your sample so that you could continue to draw the other details around. I hope that is helpful for you. Let me know if it's not. Awesome. Yeah, so basically you want to break it down into basic shapes. And so looking at the center first, you want to determine how can I make that a simple shape? Simple shape being a circle, square, rectangle, triangle, um, oval, hexagon, that sort of thing. Yeah, that was a great question. Thank you for that. So you may have to adjust some of your lines, um, after using the line work, the sample that you've used, but you should have a pretty straight-ish snowflake. As an adult, I still make snowflakes. I still make the ones that you cut out for paper, using paper. I find them so relaxing. I do it all year round. I know that sounds really strange, but I find it very relaxing to cut snowflakes. Sometimes I use different colored paper. Okay, I'm going to just erase my lines in the middle. I have to redraw a little bit just because I've erased. Okay, and I'm going to take one last look to make sure that I like where all my lines are. And then our next step is going to be starting the background. So, okay. So what we're going to do now is, and again, if you want to do something with the middle, you are welcome to. I might add a little bit here in the middle to my original. Maybe I'll do that. Okay. So we are going to start off with creating our background. And what I like to do first is use the dark blue or regular blue as the background. And then what we're going to do is we're going to mix different shades of blue using our white and our black and even our purple. And then we're going to start creating the pointillism. All right, so I like to start off using my round brush to sort of outline in paint, and then go and fill in the rest of the color using the flat brush. So I like to wet my brush. If any of you are unfamiliar with acrylic paints, they are water-based. Water you can use to wet your brush a little bit. You can also use water to do a little bit of mixing with paints if you want, but you don't have to. I always like to wet my brush first before I start. So I just kind of wet it in the water here and then brushed it off, tapped it off a little bit on my paper towel. And now I'm ready to get into my blue. And I'm now going to outline the snowflake. So again, if your paint is sort of not kind of rolling on the canvas as much as you like, you can wet your brush. Right now, we just want to basically outline the shape. And then we will go back and create, you know, with paint using, making it darker. But right now, what we want to do is outline our design. I feel like this is a very simple painting in the sense of you can really explore your colors. The challenge is probably number one, the drawing, right? And then also sort of outlining everything with paint. I would say those are the challenging parts of it. But other than that, I think it's going to be fun. And you probably have to go back and kind of load your brush up a lot with the paint. My room is very dry, so it's drying out my acrylic paints. And just kind of take your time and relax. Hopefully your day is pretty much over. And we're just kind of getting ready for retiring for the evening. We're kind of settling in. So it's a little slow going at first here because you are outlining everything. But once you have everything outlined, it's then starting to, well, then we will do the background color and then we will add to the background color. I'm using my water a lot for, making my outline a bit more marker-like. It doesn't matter right now if your line is thick or thin because we will be painting around it. Getting there, right? So obviously, the more intricate your snowflake is, um, the more ground you'll have to cover, but it will look very nice. Another tip is as you are painting around, following the lines here, um, you may want to move your canvas like upside down, in order to get to spots. So I kind of rotate my canvas as I'm working on each section so that I don't lean on a part that is still wet. So I don't know if that's helpful for you, but since it's a smaller painting and we're being a little more precise, it might be helpful for you to rotate your painting. Now, the ones in the middle, you may just want to sort of paint those sections in. Mine are little triangles, so I'm just going to paint those in. And it should really be starting to look like a snowflake at this point. And if you make a mistake on the actual snowflake, we're going to be painting that sort of white, a little bit of blue, a little bit of lavender. So you will have time to fix it for sure. Lots of detail, but good thing about this is once you outline it, half of the work is done. Then you can just focus on the fun part. Come on, finally on the last one. I will wait for everybody. So no worries if you're not finished. Okay. Oops. Went a little too heavy with my rinsing my brush. So if you're finished with creating the, going around your snowflake, you can now fill in the background color. And again, we're going to first just use the blue. I would recommend, using your flat brush. And so we're just going to now start to fill in the color, the background with our blue. I like to kind of do the edges first for this painting, just because it's a rather simple painting, but you don't have to. I just like to make sure that my edges are painted with enough paint. Making sure to get the corners. And then, so what I do is, especially because this one is rather detailed, I paint the larger areas first, which are the areas in between all the detail. And then go back and paint in between. You may have to, do sort of a double coat, but you may not, because we are using this basically as the first layer of our background. We're going to be adding lots of dabs of paint on top of this, so it doesn't have to look as flat as it normally would if you were just creating a flat color as the background. And it's up to you if you want to switch brushes once you paint the, all around the snowflake or in the larger parts. I use my flat brush for a lot of things, but I'm very used to using a flat brush. But in order for you to get into the grooves of each section of your snowflake, you probably want to switch to a round brush. Yes, this is the same blue. Yep. We are doing the same blue as we outlined the snowflake in. Yep. That's a good question. Yep, we have not switched blues yet. So this is just the same blue. And as I mentioned, once you're finished with doing the outline, you're then going to start in with around doing the detail. But the fun part is once you paint this much, we're then going to be using a combination of brushes, but mostly using our Q-tips to apply color, dots of color. You might want to do a section at a time after you complete sort of around the bigger areas. Again, it's all up to you on what you're comfortable with. And again, we don't have to have this look to be a flat color. Again, this is the second longest part of this painting besides the drawing section. After that, it's really fun to start adding the color, the different blues. I've started to switch to doing smaller paintings now for a lot of these programs because, well, number one, you can get more detail done in, an hour and a half. And then number two, they take up less space, which is kind of nice. But really, the fact that we can get more done because we have a smaller surface area to work with is nice. Well, it's really funny. I feel like no matter what size painting I work on, I still get it all over myself. It's like I'll have paint on my arm tomorrow that I thought I wiped, that I washed off. But every once in a while, someone will point out, oh, you have something, you have like a mark there. And then I realize it's the painting from the night before. Another thing is that, once we get this background painted and we start on the detail, we've pre-drawn our template, but if you decide you want to add more detail as you're painting, you can. You can add maybe extra lines, or the lines that you've added, make them a little more flourishy, like maybe you want to add kind of a fancy, like a fancy curve instead of what you drew. You will have the ability to do that, but you've got a good base to work with. And that's just saying if you want to, change it a little bit. I'm excited thinking about what these are all going to look like, because this is the kind of project where everyone's is going to look so different. I love that. All right, I'm almost done here with the background. Don't worry, I will give you all more time. Yeah, it's okay if it's drying blotchy. Absolutely. Um, so the background is going to be covered with other blues and purple. So we're not going to worry about the background in the sense of making sure it is all even. Yeah, that was a good question. Yeah, no worries if it's blotchy, if it's uneven in certain areas. Um, I mean, I do like to go back a little bit and kind of smooth it out a little bit, but it doesn't have to be smoothed out. That's the thing, because we're going to be making a lot of um, a lot of different blues, and applying the way we're going to be applying the paint is going to be chunky. So this is just serving as our background color. So you do want to make sure that you've got, you know, the background color on here, but you can go back using either your brush or, you know, the Q-tip to apply more color. But it will definitely not be even, a distribution of even color. So yeah, it's okay if your background is blotchy. I would suggest probably 4 or 5. And so I do like to use the other side of my Q-tip, so maybe get 10 just in case. And you can rinse your brushes for right now. I'm actually going to get some fresh water. Um, we're going to get into the really fun uh, part for the last half hour. And pretty much moving forward, we are going to be using our Q-tips. You're welcome to, you know, in addition to use your brushes. And if you really want, you can use your brushes to apply, you know, kind of the chunks of paint that we're going to do. But I found using Q-tips really makes it fun and gives the literal impression of, you know, a bunch of colors. Now we do have to mix up the colors, so you can use your brush to do that. And those colors are going to be a blue and white mixture, which so it's going to be a lighter blue. And you want to make sure to mix up quite a bit because we're going to be using a lot of the paint. The color of this lighter blue is dependent on you. So we're going to be using the paint in a chunky fashion, applying a lot of paint to the Q-tip because you have to apply a lot of paint to a Q-tip. And or, you know, you can use your flat brush or your round brush. You'll get different strokes. um, but that's okay. We want dabs of color rather than flat areas of color. So again, you want to mix up some blue and white to get a slightly lighter blue. And then I like to mix a third color of blue using white to make an even lighter blue. And again, you want to mix quite a bit. And then I actually take some purple and mix it into a little portion of the lightest blue that we made so that it becomes like a lavender. So again, this combination, this is blue and white. This one is more white to the blue. This is not wiping off, not washing out my brush with the light blue still on it, and then adding a touch of the purple to make lavender. I'm going to add a little more. And you can get a little lighter with that if you want, you know, by adding white. But these are your colors. And we're going to mix one more using black. And basically we're going to be mixing black and blue together to get a very dark blue. So quite a bit of mixing. So my brush one more time. I'm going to keep this up here so that you can see the range of colors. I'm just going to grab some fresh water one more time. But take a look to see the range of colors here. Again, this is black and blue to make almost like a midnight blue. There's my regular blue that we did the background with. Then I expanded the blue and added a little bit of white to make this color. Then added more white to that. Didn't rinse my brush with the light blue, and then I added some purple to make lavender. Okay. All right, so now, if you are ready, we grab our first Q-tip. And what we're going to do is, I like to go darker in the four corners. And so we're going to swirl around that Q-tip in the darker blue. And literally You're going to create a darker corner by kind of pouncing your Q-tip down. In those four corners. So again, I'm taking a combination of the black and the blue. I'm using one of my Q-tips to kind of dot the corners, right? And so now you have a combination of that color and your dark blue from your background. And this is how we're going to apply all of our colors for this snowflake. Oh, welcome, Lenny. We're recording, so I have everyone on mute, but welcome. So I also like to apply this color let's see, going up and down. You can do a combination of those things. So I go up and down, but then when I have to get into a section that is tight, I smear it. Does that make sense? So see right here, I also like to go into sort of around the snowflake using that dark color. And I'm using the Q-tip. Now, if you want to instead use your round brush, you can just dip the round brush and then start to dot it in the sections that are a little bit too close for you to get in with the Q-tip, if that's more comfortable. You can also turn the Q-tip to the side. That is a little bit helpful. And so anywhere that you want it to be a little bit darker, you can start to use your dark colors. So it doesn't, again, it doesn't have to look exactly like mine. I like to use, a little more of some of this darker color right up against, sort of in the middle of my snowflake. You can also kind of outline it a little more by this dotting method. Like for instance, I'm going to do that now in this section. So I'm literally going around each section of the snowflake. I'm not worrying if it's exactly right up against it. And you may have to, switch to another Q-tip for this if it's starting to get, the cotton is starting to kind of expand a bit and you're not able to get as close. But remember, we're also going to be adding white, white, blue, lavender to the part that we didn't paint yet, parts that we didn't paint yet. So what we're doing is we're getting the darker areas on underneath the first layer. And then we're going to add the lighter paint, and it's really going to look, it's going to look great. So this is so strange. And, teaching for all of you, and somebody's setting off fireworks outside. I wonder if they're happy because it's 50 degrees. Very interesting. Yeah, it is a holiday today. That's true. You know what? I didn't think about that. Yeah, thank you, Debbie. That's right. That might be what it is. As a matter of fact, I bet that's exactly what it is. So as you can see, it's starting to get a bit darker. Now, the other color combinations you can also start to do. Now, what I also like to do is start to expand the dark a little more into the rest of the blue, but I kind of create wider areas of it. So can you see how it's starting to get layered using, the black and the blue, but I spread out my dots a bit more so that the regular blue that we did on the background is still showing. But this gives a little more, little bit of some darkness to the background. So this is where, this is the fun part where you get to choose how much dark you want on your canvas. And you can always go back, and add it, but I like to add it first and then get lighter with the colors. That's just my preference. But so those other colors that you mixed, you can start to add those on too if you are ready. So again, I go from dark to light. So the next color I'm going to add is going to be, I actually want to add a little bit of purple, plain purple, the purple that we, didn't mix, just straight purple. Just want to get a little more areas that have a little bit more, some dark. All right, and now I'm going to flip this over. And I'm going to get into my purple. And I'm going to start dotting away. So I didn't make purple. I just, that was sort of the color. But if you don't have purple, you can just use your blue without it. It's really quite more of a blue painting. But if you have purple lying around, you could even add pink to it. It didn't call for pink, but you can make this, fun using different colors besides the blue. Blue and white. But so, it's quite a lot of paint, and you can still see that my blue is still, kind of shining through. So you'll find you will get, the colors will get either more concentrated, as you stay in one area and dot, or you can make it look lighter by spreading that color out by, creating the dots in a wider area, like, not concentrating on one area so much. But I want some of this purple to be a little more concentrated in around kind of the corners on top of the black. But now I'm going to start to add my light blue. So the first lighter color. So not the real light blue, but see, and look what that does. I don't know if you can tell. Let's see. Let me move some light away from it. And you may have to mix up some more, blue. Or you may have to use another Q-tip. And the more concentrated you stay in certain areas, the more that color comes out. All right, going in for my another Q-tip here. And when you get into the center of your snowflake, don't be afraid to go on your on the part that we didn't paint yet, the white canvas parts. Also, if you're picking up a lot of the other color or colors, you might want to let your canvas dry a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to start going heavier on the light blue. I'm going to mix a little more. I haven't used the light blue yet. This is the lightest blue. And remember, if you want it to be a little more concentrated with this color, you tap very close together. If you want it to be a little less concentrated, you tap a little bit, you kind of expand your area of where you're tapping. This is my very light blue. I'm going to pick up some of the purple here that is already on here, and I'm okay with that because it's going to turn a little more lavender-like. Remember, if you want it a little bit more of a solid color, you can go back in, even using a little bit of your brush or the Q-tip and kind of adding another color back in. Like if you wanted it a little more of a darker blue, you can go back in using that original blue that we used at the beginning. You might want to even out the color. Maybe, it's getting to a point where, oh, I don't want so much of that black there. So I'm going to go back in with a little more of the darker blue. It all depends on what you want it to look like. Your fingers will probably get messy if you haven't figured that out by now. Yes, we are going to use straight white. Yes. Hard to layer and not smear. Yeah. So what you want is you want to, if you're having that problem, you want to kind of bend your Q-tip to the side so that you almost get like an edge, like I'm doing that right now. And then I'm dotting it very close together, close to the canvas instead of going up and down with my Q-tip, so you can kind of hear the difference, right? It's soft there. And then I'm kind of pounding it down, straight down. So if you want, you can kind of very slowly. And then again, you can switch to your brush or your brushes if you want to get more of a, not so much a round dabbing, but like a, more of like a brush stroke dabbing. So what you can do at this point as you're building up the color, you can either apply the white to the actual snowflake. You can also add some white in your background if you like, and also lavender. So this, at this point, we are now layering our background for the most part. And if you want, you can also use your Q-tip to create the snowflake as well. I'll show you how to do that in just a second. It's the same method, but again, if you want it to be a little more precise, you can use one of your brushes. I'm going to retire that Q-tip. I think I've beat it up enough. And remember, you have lavender too. If you want to add some lavender into this, I add a little bit of lavender, but you're welcome to add more. And this is all, your preference. For one of the summer programs, I'm actually working on a sunset like this, Pointillism sunset. So instead using reds, orange, yellow, that sort of thing. These are really fun to do, as mentioned, with kids too. Maybe a more simplified. All right, so I'm going to start adding the white to, oh, I think I need another Q-tip. Yep. All right. So I'm adding white again in kind of dots in the shape of each section. Very clumpy. And I'm starting to make it look a little more round-like just by using the Q-tip. So it's going to look a little more like a snowflake. And this is where you can make parts of it thicker if you want. And you can add some light blue in this as well. Your Q-tip will probably pick up a bit of the color from the background. So if you want it to be pure white, you may have to wait for it to dry and go over it again. For instance, my original, as you can see, is actually different colors. I did go back in with my brush on this one in certain parts using my round brush. So if you want to, if you prefer to do that, you can. Ooh, two Q-tips at the same time. Ooh, I bet that turned out really well, Debbie, for the background you're talking about. Very smart. Good idea. And also very nimble of you. We are finishing up our snowflake here. We have a few minutes left. Yeah, I picked up a little of the blue here along the ends of my snowflake here. And I'm not mad about it. I like it. And even when it's a bit more dry, you can go back and you can add separate colors if you want. It will stand out more. Absolutely. Um, but you can also go back and, add some more of the background color in, while it's wet, and then you can go and, add in the colors that you were doing so that they will combine with each other. And that's only if you want to. I kind of like the combination of the white with, you know, my background colors kind of mixed in a little with it. Finishing up here. Like I said, and I'll probably let this dry a little bit, and then go back and make certain parts of the snowflake, a little brighter. I'm going to add just a tiny bit of some lavender to my snowflake. But since it's very wet right now, I think I'll hold off. But then I'm also going to add a few touches of some details that I didn't originally have. So just adding a few more areas in between the original snowflake to make it a little more fancy. I'm so curious what everybody's looks like. I'm going to stop the recording.